Oh, hey. All right, so today I am answering your questions. I put out a community post saying if you wanted to ask a question, I'll be more than happy to answer. So that's what we're going to dive into today. All right, the first one is, where do I source items from? This one, it's probably a range of different places, but essentially I go to op shops, I go to savers, I go to thrift shops, and 70% of my items sourced are probably coming from those op shops and thrift shops. 30% are coming from private deals, are coming from deceased estates, and maybe freebies, whether it's from people that I know or from, the side of the road and things like that. But majority of it has been op shops. I would like to change that, getting more into the bulk deals and buying in bulk, because it's going to save me a lot of time in the longer run. And then there was a follow-up question to this one, which was, which parts of Melbourne do I do this? So for those that don't know, I'm here in Australia, Victoria, Melbourne. So I do all areas far and wide of Melbourne CBD. So I do everything from Melbourne CBD, exactly in the middle of the city, versus I always also do probably as wide as 80 kilometers out from the CBD, more so from the southeast side of. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. The next one was, how do I check puzzles when selling? So I love to resell puzzles. There's a whole bunch of different puzzles that I love to do, which are Dinotopia, Star Wars, pop culture, and some of the big ones as well. Now, if it's not sealed, obviously it needs to be checked. So how I go about doing that is essentially, I give them to my mum. She loves to do these. Now, there is always the debate, can you count them versus, do you do them, or do you just risk it? I never risk it, and I don't go about counting it either, because the counting, sometimes you miss the pieces or you miscount. So, and sometimes there'll be 1,000 pieces, but they're different pieces as well. So I give them to my mum, she loves to do them, and yeah, that's worked out in my favor, I guess. How many buyers leave feedback? Now, you can see up on screen that at this point of time, I have a lot of people pending to give me feedback. And look, I would like to think that I'm probably only getting 40% of the feedback that I would want. And that's okay. Sometimes they're new buyers, sometimes they forget, but also some people don't do it until you do feedback. But I don't like to give feedback until I've got their feedback. So it's a bit of a catch-22. But if you're starting out and you're trying to get feedback, my recommendation is go ahead and start to make some purchases, some cheap purchases, and get some feedback from that way. And then as you start to sell off some things cheaply as well, people will more than likely give you some feedback. So yeah, that's the way I would go about it. But don't be too beaten up if people aren't leaving feedback, because unfortunately people are lazy, and you can't force them to do it. The next one is, would I consider the sneaker reselling market? Now with this person I know is actually alluding to more so the high value ticket item sneaker market, meaning your Nikes and the Bolos and things like that. Well, yes, potentially, but it's definitely something that I have no idea about. I do sell shoes. I've sold quite a few shoes, not heaps, but a few, and these are just secondhand shoes and things like that, just they're picked up from the op shops and whatnot. Probably the highest value has been around $150. But getting into the sneaker game, I definitely think there's something there, but there's a lot to get into it, and I feel like it's a lot of cash outlay up front. So something not at this point that I'm interested in getting into. Definitely going to continue to suss it out, and if an opportunity comes up, well then by all means I'm going to jump into it and see if it can make me some dollars, but no necessarily intentful plans to try and get into that. Another question was advice for someone wanting to start reselling. Now, I've done a lot of videos on this, so you can check them out. I've put them up on screen, but it really comes down to start with what you know. So if you're wanting to get into this, we all have our things that we love to do, our hobbies, our passions, and things that we know about. Whether it might be Lego, maybe you've got childhood Lego. So start selling things that you're not using, that you're not wanting from around home. Thrift from home and start with what you know. If you're a big Star Wars fan, you're going to know what things are worth, what you would pay for it. So if you can find those and put them, start with that. The other thing is, go slow. Be willing to learn and test and try things. Don't go out there and buy like a big bulk deal of $1,000 worth of things. Start slow and get comfortable and find your groove. But also do your research. Be careful in what you buy, but also go into it with, the open mind of like, oh, maybe this could make me some dollars, and do the research. I've got a whole bunch of different videos on this. You can go check them out, as I mentioned before. But I think, understand what you're trying to achieve as well. If you're trying to achieve just wanting an extra $100 per week, or if you're trying to actually do this as a full-time income, those two things will probably change the way you go about doing this. So understand what your goal is, understand what you're trying to look from this, but also just start slow, start with what you're comfortable with, and then start to research and get comfortable with new things and try new things. I hope that answers your question. I know there was a follow-on point to this one. You know, do you need to start a company or anything like that? Whether you're Australian, American, or wherever. For me, my 100% advice would be to, you know, chat to an accountant and see what is the best option for you. Does it make sense to go sole trader? Does it make sense to be doing it as a company? It all depends on your current income. It also depends on your situation. I think there's some pros and cons of doing it either way. But yeah, speak to an accountant and see what would work best for you. All right, the next question that I have here is, with games, DVDs, and CDs, do I test them? The short answer is no. If they're sealed, obviously I don't need to. That's what I try and get first. And then I go through and actually find anything with scratches and without scratches, and then I separate them. Some of them I'll take a risk on and say light scratches, heavy scratches, and if there's any issues, I'll, you know, be more than happy to give a refund. Otherwise, I just don't do it and I bundle them up and sell them off as a Facebook marketplace or something. So essentially, I don't test them because I can see from face value that they're pretty good condition, and that's the way I go about it. It saves me a lot of time. It also means I probably miss out on some opportunity, but you know, unless these items are worth $60, you know, I'm not really missing out on a $9 sale. So that's really the approach I take on those. That's DVDs, video games, and CDs. And then a follow-up question also in the similar category is, how do I send DVDs, video games, and CDs? Well, actually, just hold on. Let's go have a look and I'll show you. All right, it's a bit messy in here because I've just got a big hole that I've just done. But as you can see, here is a Blu-ray. Essentially, inside this Blu-ray, what I would be doing is grab one of these, put it in here, flatten it, put it down, and then I'm going to be using this, but also one of these sleeves. So I'm going to put the DVD in this sleeve, put it in here, put a stamp on it, or a couple of stamps, depending on the weight, and then it's good to go. If you want to see a full video on this, go check it out on screen right now, because I go into a lot of detail on why I do this and some of the different, I guess, reasonings and parameters around, you know, should you be doing it above a certain value and things like that. So go check it out. I'm back. So if that didn't make sense, as I said, go check out this entire video on how I post basically DVDs, CDs, and video games. And essentially, I go through how I made a change, and it's how it's actually saved me a lot of money by making that change. Watch that, and that will answer all those questions. I won't go into too much detail because it probably is about a 5-6 minute answer. The next one is favorite categories to sell and why. It probably is books, DVDs, and video games, simply because that's what I know, and it's been the easiest for me to get into. I love doing a lot of sci-fi, a lot of fantasy, because that's kind of like the things I'm into as well. But, you know, at the same time, I'm starting to get into toys, starting to get into more clothes. But the DVDs, video games, and books, they're just really easy for me, and that's what I've been really good at being able to source. So, yeah, that's really the reason why. It's just naturally where I landed into, I guess. Each to their own. Now, the next question is, do I need to pay tax? Now, this is both directed at you and at me as well. So, yes, we always have to pay tax. If you're trying to make money, you need to be paying tax to the government. Talking about Australia here, that is the ATO. So in terms of how much tax I pay and where that lands, well, the thing that we need to take into account here, and why I don't talk about it in my videos, like included into my expenses and things like that, is because tax comes out at the end of the financial year. And tax is something which, you know, depends how much money you earn across all income streams, not just your reselling, not just this or that, you know, whether it's YouTube, whether it's another business, or, you know, maybe you have a salary and things like that. That needs to be taken into account. So when it comes to tax, you know, I am putting money aside each and single payday, which I have a video on this as well. You can see how I do that using the profit first system. I allocate a certain percentage from every time I make an income from eBay, and I put that aside. So then when it comes to tax payday, or when the taxman comes after me, I can say, here's the money, and I'm covered. Now, on the same principle, when it comes to GST, for those that are here in Australia as well, GST also applies when you hit a certain threshold. And once again, depending on where you are with your business and how much money you're making, how much revenue you're making, and things like that, the GST will apply differently. And I guess to top off this point, and the previous question is, you need to have an accountant. You need to speak to your accountant. You need to see what works best for you and what you're going to need to be, I guess, considering, and what is going to be the most appropriate for you. So please chat to an accountant. If you need an accountant, I'll chuck one up on screen, or you can go down to the description below and check out Ethan Rushock. He does a lovely job. Great guy, really smart, and he's doing some pretty cool stuff. So yeah, highly recommended. Now, the next question was, when is it worth going to a store on eBay? Now, essentially, I don't have the full answer for this, is because it was different for me when I did it. So when I first started, basically I could do 33 free listings every month, and that's what I was doing. And then as I started to get volume, such as 5 to 10 to 15 listings per day, it made sense after a period of time that the fee percentage that I was paying came down because of the volume I was doing. However, I believe this has now changed. I believe there is now, new opportunities or incentives for people to, at least sign up for an eBay account, let alone a store. So it will vary depending on how much volume you're doing, how much transactions you're doing, and things like that. The other thing to consider is when I made the store movement, back then we were doing PayPal payments. And then there was the option to move on to eBay managed payments, which then there was a bit of a bonus by moving to eBay managed payments. I wasn't having to pay the PayPal fee, so it worked out as a benefit for me. So for me, I am currently on a basic store, and I'm actually just pulling this up on screen and having a look right now. But essentially for a basic store, there is a fixed order fee, applies to all transactions regardless. And then there is a category percentage fee depending on which category you're selling in. So these range from anything from 7.3 up to 11.9%. And then depending on the size of the price, meaning the volume of the price or the total price sold, whether it was $4,000, over that $4,000 amount, there is another handling fee or another fee that comes from eBay, but I'm not really selling $4,000 items, so it doesn't really impact me. So really, that's the way it plays out. But essentially, if you sell something in a basic store, if you sell something for $300 in home appliances, essentially it's going to be $22.20. In a featured store, if you sold something for $150, it's going to be around $15.60. That's under vehicles and parts. And if you had an anchor store, which is the top tier, and you sold something for $5,200 under sporting goods, you would essentially be paying $434 in total final fees. So when you think about it, when you look at the percentages, there's so many parameters to take into account. The basic store just made more sense for me. If I was doing volumes of, probably 1,000 to 2,000 sales a month, I would probably look to upgrade my store. But I think for where I'm at this point, what I would recommend you do is find out how much fees you're paying on a regular basis without a store, and then do the comparison. Right, the next question that I had was, what was the first item ever sold? Now, this one, it's a little hard to do because before I went into this, from a perspective of tracking it on a weekly basis, I was testing this out back in October in 2020. So what I'm gonna do is actually do this from when I started my journey of reselling online, which is week 1 of this journey. So at the time of this video, we're starting week 71. So back on week 1, which comes back to the 11th of January 2021, I had a sale that came through. Well, this is crazy. It was a video game called the Stronghold Collection PC game. I paid $5 for this item. I listed it for 20, I sold it for 20, and I also paid postage on this one, and I made a profit of $3.25 with a 16% margin. So that was my first sale going into this journey. So it wasn't my first sale ever on eBay, but it was my first sale getting into the reselling business. So it just goes to show that definitely come a long way from that, because I would probably never pick that up again for $5. The next question that I have is fastest item to sell. Now this one, it's a little hard to say because there's been so many items that have sold in a single day, just boom, straight away. But I think the quickest one would have to be the Goonies VHS from 1985 in a clamshell. I listed it and it sold within 10 minutes for full price, and I made $81 profit on this one after fees and postage. So that was probably the quickest sale, but I've sold Lego, I've sold books, I've sold certain things that I've listed on one day and they've sold within the same day, but that was definitely the quickest. The next question was best flip that I have ever done. Well, this is an interesting one. So if I go to profit, highest profit, there was one flip that I did, but it was a bulk deal, so I'm not going to include that. It actually happened just only about a month ago. Was the pink Honda S2000 from the Fast and Furious, this boxed model, which if you haven't seen it, I'll chuck it up on screen, you can have a look. But essentially I paid, the actual item was around $20, $30, but from the average cost of goods from a couple of items that I purchased from the store, worked out to be about $2.78. And I sold this for $240, It only sat around for 2 days, and I profited after fees and postage $206.27. So that's probably been one of my best picks and flips. The next question was, what are my long-term reselling goals? Well, essentially, at the end of the day, you know, I'm doing reselling to make money. And there's a question that came after this, which was, is this my full-time job or supplementary? So essentially, I stepped away from my full-time job, a year and a half ago, to focus on my passions, my dreams and goals, which is building out my podcast called Further Your Lifestyle. Now, that doesn't make an income at this point. Makes a little bit, but not much. And in order to make sure that I can continue to pay my bills and, you know, live life and things like that, I needed to obviously do something that's going to make me some money quickly. So I went to reselling. The reselling continues to pay my bills. It's definitely not making me millions or giving me a luxury lifestyle, but it does everything that I need. It pays my bills, it enables me to live comfortably, and it enables me to save. In terms of my long-term reselling goals with that, is I would love to be able to make money from my podcast and make money from some other little things that I'm working on, but also the reselling too. And this becomes a component of my income. Now, if that means that I can start to scale the business and have someone working for me, and I'm taking my hands off the business and not working in the business, but working on the business, then I'll do that. At this point, I haven't really planned out a big long-term plan or anything like that. I've more focused on, you know, what I'm trying to achieve for this year, which is $60,000 profit. And then I'll continue to see where that leads to. So, and that's why it is at this point in time, it is my full-time gig. I'm probably doing 4 days worth of work on this out of my 7-day weeks. And then the rest of it is YouTube, my podcast, and living life and doing my running and things like that. So yeah, hope that answers the question. Now, the next question was, and I think that's all the reselling stuff. So, I mean, of course, if you've got more questions along the way, chuck it down in the comments below and I'll always do another one of these, or I'll answer in the comments. But the next 2 questions is regards to my chickens. And the first question is, why did I decide to have chickens? So I got my chickens about 4 or 5 years ago, and the original intent for them was to just get some pets, but also for eggs. We wanted to be able to get eggs coming through. So we got 4 chickens and we're getting 4 eggs every single day. Now that they've gotten a bit older, they're no longer really laying consistently. So now they are really just good friends and good pets. And they're really great for mental health, to be honest. I love to just sit, chat, hang out with them, watch them, and just, yeah, do gardening with them and things like that. So that's really what I enjoy. I've only got 3 left now. One did pass, unfortunately. So the names are Ziggy, Pepper, Daisy, and the one that passed was Molly. And the following question was, how do I tell them apart? Well, essentially, they've got these little rings on them. Actually, let's go have a look. Hello. What's happening? All right, so if you can see down there, there's a little ring just there. That's how we tell them apart. They've actually kind of lost them. So that's Pepper right there. This one is Daisy, and she's the most cheekiest one. And where is Ziggy? Ziggy! Tuk, 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 tuk. Tuk, 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 tuk. Tuk, 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 tuk. Oh, there she is. In the back. Ta-da! Here she comes. She's having a dust bath. Come on! Tuk, 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 tuk. Come on! There we go. There we go. So there's all 3. So we have, this is Daisy, this is Pepper, and that is Ziggy. Ta-da! All right. So that is all your questions answered. And if you've got other questions, as I said before, please go ahead, drop them in the comments below. More than happy to answer. But also, go check out some of my other videos. I've got a whole bunch of different videos that I've mentioned just now as well around some of these questions that give you some detailed analysis. There is some other common questions that I always get, which is like, how do you know what to sell on eBay? Well, if you want to know what to sell on eBay, go watch this video. That will tell you what you need to do. I can hear the chickens now. The other one is, you know, I talk about why I sell books and how I sell books and things like that. Go check out that video. I've also got plenty of videos on tips and tricks and guides of, you know, how I manage my reselling business. Not just as a, you know, little thing to make some cash on the side, but how I actually operate as a business. So I've got a whole video on that as well, talking about profit first, talking about my, you know, my reselling tracking sheet, but also how I manage and calculate profit on items and things like that, bulk deals and stuff like that. So you can go check that one out. So I've got a whole range of different things. You can check out my weekly progress, my monthly progress, and all that jazz. I am trying to be an open book and really just share the journey and, you know, help other people along the way. I enjoy this. It's a lot of fun. It takes a lot of time though, but it's a lot of fun. So I hope I've answered all your questions. If you do have more, as I said, ask down below. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for asking, and I'm sure I'll do this again soon enough. Otherwise, you have an awesome week. Hopefully get some good sales, and yeah, cheers.